Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night, or better yet, Hockey Afternoon in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Saturday, February 11, 2023, coming at you live from Floored Media in Rockville Center. A happy-go-lucky show coming up for you tonight after today's result. Stefen is with me here. I'm Sean Cuthbert. Very excited to talk to Anna Dua, NHL fantasy editor and host. She's going to help us out a little bit later. Looking forward to that. Stefen, we had the viewing party earlier. It was a lot of fun, despite the unfortunate result. We had Donnie Bagels join us. Edzo was over there with us. Mikey Carver from Isle Seed Podcast.
Christian had an appearance.
He didn't say much, but he was here in spirit. But yeah, Mikey from Isle Seed Podcast. Good time today, despite the Islanders not making it a great time. Stefen, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Obviously, Blue Line Bagel and Deli, to eat that food is just always a pleasure. And
catered by the great man, Donnie, over at Blue Line. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you watched a similar game to what Thursday was. So,
Well, at least they got a point this time.
And we had bagels.
And we had
bagel food.
We had bagel food. Yeah, so folks, if you hung out with us earlier today, really appreciate it. We had a good time. If you dug what we did today with the little watch along, we're definitely looking to do that in the future, so let us know. Hope you had a good time. We did, despite the result. And we're gonna fire it up here and just talk about a little bit of reality here for the New York Islanders. But before we do, I want to remind you all that we are proud to be presented by Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. That is the flagship location. Also, 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip, and of course, UBS Arena at Belmont Park. A big thanks to Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. And want to update you guys, we have a plethora of events coming up at Lost Farmer Brewery, starting with Saturday, February 18th. They will be going into Boston for a 5 o'clock tilt. Old pal of the show, Tony Stabile, going to be joining me for that. Going to have a nice little pregame show at 4 o'clock for Puck Drop at 5. Always a good time at Lost Farmer. Always a good time with the viewing parties. Then Wednesday, the 22nd, Islanders going into, Winnipeg is coming to town that night. Yep. So if you can't make it to UBS Arena, we're going to be hanging out again for a viewing party at Lost Farmer. And we're going to put a different little spin on it. We're going to have Islanders Trivia Night during the game, during the intermissions, before and after. Going to have prizes, raffles, and stuff. Going to be a lot of fun. Me and Mikey on the couch are going to be doing that. Going to be a lot of fun. And then the following weekend, the 26th, they will be in Winnipeg. We're going to be raising money there. Great cause there. It's going to be a fundraiser. We're going to have a pregame show. Stefen Rosner will be with me for that. That is a 3:30 start. That is what, Saturday? That's Sunday, isn't it?
Sunday, yeah.
That is Sunday, 3:30 game start. We're going to get the pregame show going at 2:30. So a lot of fun things happen at Lost Farmer. And then, of course, a big thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. More on them later. So, Stefen, what happened today, man?
Again, it's another game where didn't seem like there was a huge push at points of this game. Again, the Islanders score. They have a lead going to the third, a second straight game. They've blown a third period lead. Just, again, defensively, you got too many of the opponents in front, and that's not, again, Varlamov had a pretty strong effort today.
He did.
Which is what you needed.
Can't blame anything on him today.
Yeah, which is what you needed after Sorokin was a bit shaky in that game on Thursday. You got the goaltending, you got the goals, and then you have to find a way to bear down. I know Lambert after the game said, on a personal level, individual level, someone's got to step up and win a battle. And again, you just didn't get that.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because you get a little hope with the two games before the break, the games against Detroit and Vegas. They look like they were more defensively responsible. They were able to clamp down those games a little bit and hang on to leads and win those games. They come back from a long break, obviously rejuvenated with Bo Horvat coming in, and they look very similar. In fact, they play a good game against Philadelphia, another low-scoring game, another non-3-goal game, but they're able to stick it out. And then what might have been, at least to me, at least in recent history, their best win of the season, if not one of, against Seattle. That was probably the closest game to 60 minutes I've seen them play this season. They obviously shut them out. Sorokin has another great game, 4-0 win, and you're saying, okay, maybe this is starting to become a trend here. Maybe they're starting to figure things out, whether it's the break that helped them out, whether it's Horvat coming in, but you're like, hey, maybe they can actually make a push here. Then you get to Thursday. You have a goal fest against the Canucks at home, against a team towards the bottom of the standings. They can't even squeak a point out in that game after having a 2-goal lead there. And then you have today against another weak team. You go into their building. It's always tough to play in Montreal. But, again, they have a lead. They cough it up. This one goes to overtime. Ridiculous review that ends up not going their way anyway. And at the end of the day, 2 weak opponents. You take 1 point out of 4, still in the playoff race, still in the mix, still got a shot here mathematically at least. They're there if they can figure these things out, but it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence when you have 2 games like this against some weaker teams.
Again, you look at Vancouver, you look at Montreal. They are playing for nothing at this point in the year.
Right.
It's one thing to lose. There are games where the Islanders have outworked other teams and just lost. And again, that's going to happen. But when effort, which was brought up Thursday by everybody, where effort is the issue against teams like the Canucks, I get it. But Villiers returned, they wanted to win that. They had some extra juice that they probably usually don't have. But when effort is an issue from a team not in a playoff spot that is expected to be in a playoff spot that people believe, hey, they got Horvat, it's an extra added boost there. To have efforts like we saw Thursday, even efforts again tonight, I think 15 giveaways, careless with the puck a lot of bad things, a lot of good things too, but a lot of bad things. It's inexcusable at this point in the season. And again, when they say the lack of effort, they don't mean they're not trying. It just means in certain areas of the ice, certain players can give more.
They're not making the right effort.
Yes.
Right. Missed assignments, blown coverage. I mean, you had a wide open Canadian on one of those goals.
Yes.
And what was it? I think that was his first goal of his season or
first
career.
Yep.
Of course. Yeah, and wide open. And it's been talked about on the show. That's Pulock's man back there, and he gets caught in an awkward situation. Dobson, I believe it was Dobson who was in the corner trying to play the guy who had the puck initially.
Yeah.
Pulock's in front. Now, does he even see his man out of the corner of his eye? Does he even know he's there? Because if he does, he's got to be covering that guy. If not, he's caught in this weird spot where there might be a guy behind me, and he's trying to intercept the pass. It doesn't happen. It goes across, and it's in the net because it's a wide open shot, and Varlamov doesn't have a chance on that. So it makes you wonder what is going to cure these issues that this team has, continuously blowing coverage like that, leading to goals against, and then you get into a competition with a team like the Canadiens where you can't even squeak out a win here.
Yeah, and I think we'll definitely get to it in a little bit with Lambert is, again, I don't blame most of what happens this year on him. It comes down to Lou not getting the guys, come down to the players in the room stepping up. When you're not getting the effort you need out of a team that should be every game playing like a do or die, and they're not, that falls back on not even about preparation, firing them up. Again, we spoke about the last 2 games. This is the first time we've seen Lane really lose it. I mean, Thursday after the game during the press conference, you could tell he was furious. We just watched him coming off the rink after the overtime loss, where they have to come actually walk across the ice to get to the locker room. Slams the bench door, is miserable. It's got to come back out.
Walk back.
He's mad. He's fierce. And again, he should be. He's not the one playing the game, but when you have certain guys in big moments, too lackadaisical on back checks, not making the right reads, veterans, not rookies, veterans making those mistakes. Sure, is some of it on Lane? Yeah. But that just comes down to you're paying certain guys to make big plays, and they're not.
Well, not only veterans, but also guys that have been on this team long enough where they've obviously played for Lane Lambert, but they've also played for Barry Trotz.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm kind of with you here. I don't know if you put this season and how it's gone all on the shoulders of Lane Lambert, but it's not like these guys didn't know how to play positionally before. It's not like they didn't know how to cover these guys in front of the net, in the slot, whatever it is, previously. And we've seen how good most of these guys, it's not the same squad, but for the most part it is. We've seen how good they can be defensively. We've seen how well they've performed clamping down, preventing goals, preventing chances, preventing high-quality chances, and that's kind of gone out the window here. And yes, we've acknowledged the fact that Lane's running a different system. They're trying to get a little more offense. That's fine, but that's also pinching. That's also being more aggressive when the puck's in the offensive zone. When it's back in your own side, these guys are still supposed to know where they're supposed to be and who they're supposed to cover. So I think it's fair to question the coaching staff and say, how come they haven't had these guys in the right positions? Now, I don't know ultimately who that comes down to. It's the players who perform out there. But this far into the season, and they're still having trouble there. And again, guys who have done it before. If this was something that they were still learning, still trying to get a grasp on, but like you said, they're veterans. They've played a defensive system before. So why are they missing so many assignments?
Yeah, it's just, one, it goes back to communication, obviously on that Pulock where he has to guard 2 guys. That shouldn't be the case, and some forwards got to realize what's happening. but they're realizing too late. Again, it's all communication. They were discombobulated on Thursday. Again, they did play better structurally today, but again, those are mistakes when you're not a team that lights the lamp. Defense it's been their bread and butter for years. Even last year when they struggled, and as much as the defense has struggled, the offense was the major concern, and you knew, okay, if they got some leads, they have ability. They've shown it the last 2 games before the break. They have the ability to close and shut down in the third. That didn't just disappear. These guys didn't just forget how to do that.
Right.
Which is what you just said.
Right.
So in games, the last 2 games, where a team that you're playing playoff hockey at this point in the year, those have to be 2 points. There's no, again, you get a point. The Islanders get a point and go into overtime, which again, critical point. But at the same time, you look back at the year, there's going to be a couple of games to Arizona, games to Vancouver. Even this game, you look, okay, Islanders missed the playoffs by 3 or 4 points. This one's surely on it as a game where they could have gotten 2 and did not.
Yeah, and there's a lot has been said about the speed of this team, that they're not as fast as a lot of the teams in the league, but these 2 losses had nothing to do with speed.
No.
Recording in progress.
This had a lot more to do with just positional play. It wasn't a matter of how fast one guy could get to his coverage in the zone or anything. It was literally just being there at all. It's literally just picking up the right guy. So, I don't like that argument, as far as these 2 games go. And again, I just don't know where these mental errors stem from. I don't know if this is a team that is, exhausted from playing hard. I think it might have even been you who made this point on the show about, a team that has such a hard time scoring. It was said by, I think, was it Elliot Friedman,
Marek.
right?
Marek said that, yeah.
That they're busting their asses so much just to get that 1 or 2 goals that they had been getting a game that, maybe it tires them out for the rest of the season. And then, look, it's all just speculation. But at the end of the day, these guys are supposed to know where their assignments are. They're supposed to know who they're covering, whether it's the center down low or the defenseman down in front. It's just not happening. And to see it still kind of poisoning their games, this late into the season, it's not encouraging. It's hard for either one of us to sit here and say, hey, they're still in it. They still have a chance because, yeah, the points are there and stuff like that. But, when you have 2 games like this, it's hard to, take confidence in that and saying, oh, yeah, they're going to figure it out. They're going to make a run here. And maybe they can, but you got to be able to beat these teams at the bottom of the standings because after Ottawa coming up on Monday, Tuesday,
it's tough. Then
you have those sandwich games between Pittsburgh, Boston, Pittsburgh. I mean, that could be the season right there.
Oh, and Pittsburgh is games that have games in hand on you. So these are games where the Islanders got to make up ground. But the biggest issue for the Islanders the last 2 games has been their giveaways in the D zone, breaking out pucks. Again, they had 23 on Thursday. Lane afterwards said, if you turn the puck over 23 times, you're not winning. They had 15 again today. I think Montreal had 5. So again, these are mistakes in the defensive zone that what was that one shift where they are on the ice for over 2.5 minutes?
Yeah.
So that comes down to not clearing the zone when you have the chance to, and that limits everything. Offensive production changes, line changes, everything like that. So they have guys that could break the puck out. Pellick's back. Bolduc didn't play today, but Aho could do it. There's guys that could do it. Just, again, not being on the same page as your forward either. It's not just D to D. It's D to forwards, knowing where they're going to be. Forwards asking for the puck in the right spots. Because if a forward asks for the puck and the defenseman's head's down and he throws it to him and he's not open, that's on the forward. Yes, the defenseman has to pick his head up, but at the same time, you got to work together, and they're just not in sync right now.
Yeah, it's tough to watch sometimes. But, folks, we're glad you're here watching us here at Hockey Night New York. I want to thank you so much for tuning into twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast providers later on. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Anna Dua of NHL.com, NHL fantasy editor, will be joining us. Looking forward to that. We'll be right back.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup.
God damn it, Heat was lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line Combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Miss the days of mixtapes and arcades? Love the taste of a bold IPA or maybe an ice-cold lager? There's a place where all of those magical things come together. Lost Farmer Brewing Company. At 63A East 2nd Street in the heart of Mineola, Lost Farmer combines a love of the 80s and a passion for quality beer to create brews that can only be described as gnarly, radical, and totally tubular. The retro vibe of the tasting bar will amp up your nostalgia while the blend of both local and exotic ingredients amp up your taste buds. Beer not your thing? Crack open a can of cider or sip a Chardonnay on the extended patio. Order up from the snack menu. You can even bring your own. If you're more of a homebody, pick up a growler to go or order online at lostfarmerbrewing.com. And for all of Long Island's hockey fans, Lost Farmer created the delicious Stable Shaker American Lager to celebrate the newly built UBS Arena at Belmont Park. Whether you're at the stable for a hockey game, concert, or a comedy show, you can find Stable Shaker by can and draft around the arena. So raise a cup to the next cup with Lost Farmer Brewery, the future of Long Island craft beer.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, folks. The train rolls on right here at Hockey Night New York. It is time for On the Line. And joining us on the line, NHL fantasy editor and host for the NHL, Anna Dua, is joining us. Anna, thank you so much for joining us this Saturday afternoon. How you doing?
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. You're here with me, Sean and Stefen. So let's start off talking about you a little bit, working for the NHL and particularly the fantasy aspect of it. What drew you into the fantasy angle for covering hockey as opposed to maybe just covering the league itself? Like, did you have a certain appreciation for fantasy hockey? How'd you get into that?
Yeah, I'm a big stats girl. So I love stats. I love looking into the numbers. And I think fantasy is where you can really dive deep and see how like players impact a team in categories that maybe general coverage doesn't necessarily focus on. So that's definitely what drew me into fantasy.
Right on. So obviously a guy who Islander fans hope to have a big impact on the New York Islanders is Bo Horvat. He comes in on the trade here. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that, even from a fantasy perspective as well, where you have a guy of his ilk come in here and with all the expectations. I mean, look at how much a player not only has on his team, but you know, a team that has an effect on the player too, where he's a high-scoring guy. He's already coming in here scoring more goals than the rest of the team, and the Islanders are notorious for being a lower-scoring team. So, like, when you look at that situation, is Horvat going to bring the goal total up for the Islanders, or the Islanders going to bring the goal total down for Bo Horvat because of maybe the system they play or because of the guys they have in the team? What kind of, you know, impact do you see this guy making on the New York Islanders going forward now, especially with an 8-year contract?
I mean, so far he's been doing well, right? So he's still scoring. It's not like he's gone on a dry spell since coming to Long Island. So I think the Islanders should be excited about that. But obviously he was doing so well in Vancouver, right? I mean, he's still up there in goals in the whole league, has 34 on the season, I believe, so far. So he was very talented. I know Vancouver's offense is a little bit different than New York's right now, but I think he definitely boosts the Islanders. Individually, I have to say he's losing a bit of fantasy value with the trade just because I know they're going to be moving players around. You never know. They moved Barzal out to the wing, I believe, with Horvat right now. So I don't know how they're going to shift around the top six in like weeks to come and where he fits and who he finds chemistry with and who he ends up playing with. So I think individually, fantasy owners probably are going to see him lose a tiny bit of value, but he helps New York a lot. Specifically on the man advantage, I was thinking like before he moved over when the Islanders acquired him, I was like, he's going to help there because they're really struggling on the power play this season. And he was doing well in the power play in Vancouver, a league leader in power play points and was just awesome in that aspect with the Canucks. So I think he's going to add something there. So the Islanders should be excited about that.
On the flip side with Barzal, is his value skyrocketed with this move here? Obviously, again, he's a player that needed a guy like Horvat. And now, you know, for fantasy users that need to go get somebody, you know, for their run, does Barzal's value now skyrocket?
Or just for the Islanders' fantasy of making the playoffs?
Yes, their fantasy as well.
I mean, he's doing well too, right? Yeah. So Matt Barzal's kind of heating up a little bit. I think he has like 6 points in his last 5 games or something heading in, I believe. Something around there. So he's roughly like a point per game player right now for the Isles. And guys, he has such a high ceiling. I think sometimes people forget how well he played during his Calder Trophy winning year. And this is a player who's just so talented, and playing with someone like Bo Horvat absolutely could revitalize Matt Barzal a little bit and get him back to the way he was playing in his rookie year with the Islanders. So, I mean, I think his fantasy value does increase for sure. I don't know, because I saw Matt Barzal play junior hockey. I'm a big junior hockey girl. I'm Canadian. And he's a natural born center. So I have a little bit of concern around him playing wing and how he's going to fit into this lineup. I know he did really well playing center with Seattle in the WHL. So I'm just like, I'm trying to figure out how they're going to use him and utilize him, because I'm not loving the lineup position. When they got Bo Horvat, guys, that was my number one concern, right? Like, the Islanders have so much center depth. They're adding another center. I thought he would be a better fit on a team that maybe needed a center desperately, but it's working right now. I think it's going to help him a little bit, but I got to have a couple more weeks. I need to see what the final lines look like in like 2-3 weeks before I decide who's going to benefit a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And a big part of why they had Barzal move to the wing is because of the face-off prowess. Bo Horvat is one of the best in the game, while Matt Barzal is quite the opposite right now. So as long as he can work positionally, hopefully that works out. But just to key in on a little bit more of the Islanders and their playoff hopes and whatnot, and you have Horvat coming in. Hopefully he helps in the power play. He has so far. Hopefully he helps them get a couple more goals to win games, even though it didn't really happen today. But do you look at this team, if they have any hope or prayer to get into the playoffs? And this is a question we get a lot on the show, whether it's on Twitter while we're doing the show here. Do you think they need to add more, whether it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a top-line guy or a sniper or anything like that, but maybe even just depth up front or something on the back line? Does this team need another piece to kind of help, maybe not solidify, but at least boost their chances of having a fight here for one of those last playoff spots?
They might, to be honest. It's just so tough, because when I'm looking at the East, I'm thinking about what team the Islanders are going to have to knock out to make it in. And you got to win these games. Like, you're playing against Montreal, you got to win these games, right? You got to come out of these games with 2 points. And if that's not happening, that's a huge concern, because like, looking at the wild card race right now, we have Pittsburgh and Washington who are like in it for the Stanley Cup, but Florida's heating up. Sergei Bobrovsky, Spencer Knight are back. So they were like just absolutely dealing with the worst goalie luck ever down in Florida, and they're heating up a little bit. Buffalo is probably one of the most exciting teams to watch in the entire league right now. Their offense is so young, so dynamic. Their defense is great. They have some good goalies of the future there. I don't know if they make it in this year, but when I'm looking at the teams that are kind of surrounding the Isles, there's so many teams that are going to be pushing, and it's going to be a photo finish to get in. So they need all the help they can get right now, because even knocking out either Pittsburgh or Washington is going to be very, very tough to do.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about warm weather stuff, because it's freezing here. But let's talk about Florida. You were in Florida for the All-Star game. What was that experience like?
It was awesome. I mean, it was my first All-Star. No better place I could have had it, to be honest. The Islanders were very well represented there, huh? With Bo Horvat making it 3 down in Florida. But it was great. It was awesome getting to see all of them. All of them deserve to be there. I've been very high on Ilya Sorokin for years now. I've been saying that individually, if you take all environment aside, he is been in the conversation for me for the past 2 years, at least, for being the best goaltender in the NHL. So it was really nice to get to see him down in Florida and get that opportunity to play with guys like Shesterkin and see them together. It was really cool.
We're talking to Anna Dua on the line from the NHL. And Anna, speaking of that conversation, where would you pinpoint Ilya Sorokin now as far as the top goaltenders in the league go? I mean, we talking top 3 here, top 5. Does he have a little bit more to climb? Where do you see him fitting in with the Shesterkins and the rest of the top goalies in the league?
I think this year kind of highlighted a lot about the goaltender position in particular, because heading into this season, I think people thought it was a 1 and 2 race between Andrei Vasilevskiy and Igor Shesterkin. And I think this season highlighted how amazing Sorokin's season was last year, because despite everything that was going on with the Islanders as an organization, he had phenomenal numbers. He was just playing out of his mind. And so we see when teams start to go through these slumps, how goalies like Shesterkin and Vasilevskiy can falter a little bit. Linus Ullmark of the Boston Bruins having the season of his life right now. So he's absolutely at the top. But I mean, you don't know if he's going to be able to keep it consistent, because for me, Sorokin has been consistent. He's a guy who plays consistently well, despite the fact if the Islanders are playing well or not. Like, the Islanders could go on a losing streak and I'll look at his numbers and I'll be like, he's still doing like a phenomenal job in the crease. So for me, it's not even like top 3. I think right now for me, he's like 1 and 2 between like Shesterkin, Vasilevskiy, and Sorokin are all kind of like in that like range. But if I had to choose one goaltender out of the 3 at this moment, based off of like individual ceiling and individual play, Ilya Sorokin might be my number 1.
There you have it, folks. Islander fans like to hear that. And you actually bring up a great point when you mention the team in front of him, right? Like, you talk about Ullmark, and Boston's pretty much lights out this year. They're winning almost every game that they play. And, you know, this argument goes back to the beginning of time here, but, like, it's funny. I remember, you know, talking to guys years ago against Marty Brodeur. And, yes, he was one of the best goaltenders to ever play in the NHL. He was a great goaltender. But there's always that question of, well, they had that trapping New Jersey Devils team in front of him, and how much did that have to do with that? But when you raise that point now and you look at Ilya Sorokin and the season that he's having, despite all the warts of the team in front of him. And you see the success that he's having. I think there might be something to that. And maybe you're onto something there, Anna. Maybe Ilya Sorokin is the best goalie in the league because of that.
I think that's definitely like a conversation that at the very least has to be had, right? Like he's just putting up good individual effort every single night, making ridiculous saves. He's so talented, so athletic. He's a goalie that I like comparing young goalies to in this league too. Like I find myself doing that a lot. I was a big fan of Pyotr Kochetkov of the Carolina Hurricanes, who's in the AHL right now. And for me, when he was going on that little win streak that he had when he got called up to the Canes with the injuries they had, I was like, he reminds me of Ilya Sorokin. So when I'm comparing these young guys to guys like Ilya Sorokin, it shows how much of an impact he has in the goaltending position. Because for me, he's kind of someone that a lot of them should probably model their game after because he's just so athletic and so consistent.
So the Islanders, obviously being the trendsetters in the Metro that they are, they make the trade for Bo Horvat, and then the Rangers obviously have to go and make a deal themselves to get in the arms race here, and they pick up Tarasenko. So first question I want to ask, what do you make of that Tarasenko deal for the New York Rangers? And secondly, which team do you think swung the better deal when you compare them? Now, obviously, it's not apples to apples. You have Tarasenko, who's a UFA. We don't know if he's going to stick around with the Rangers going beyond this. He's also a little older than Bo Horvat, but he's obviously a trigger man, a guy who's going to put a lot of pucks in for the Rangers, to Islander fans' dismay. So maybe you can just let us know, what do you make of that deal, and then how does it compare to the Horvat deal?
I think it speaks for himself after last night, right? He came out and he made an impact almost immediately, didn't even give me time to blink. But Tarasenko is a player who sometimes I think gets a little bit underrated just because of the injury issues he's dealt with. He was obviously injured this season as well. So sometimes people forget how high of a ceiling this guy really has. I mean, he's had 6 30-goal seasons. He's had 6 seasons with at least 200 shots on net. He's a very talented player. And now the Rangers are stacking him on that first line with Panarin, and he's playing with Zibanejad. That has to be one of the best first lines in the entire NHL. Like, they're going all guns a-blazing right now. Panarin's such a talented player too. So I think no team's going to want to be playing against that first line. So the Rangers did what they had to do. I'm pretty happy with what the decision they made if I was the Rangers, because they could have gone for Patrick Kane. They would have lost a lot more if they went for Patrick Kane. They have a pretty solid offense. They just needed one right winger, and they got that in Vladimir Tarasenko. So I think New York's pretty happy with that. For me, I think the Islanders trade, I once again, I have to say, like, I have to wait a couple of weeks because I don't think they addressed the concern that they had heading into it, right? So when they got Bo Horvat, I said it earlier, but I was like, they have, like, Brock Nelson's having like an out of his mind year right now. They have like so many talented centers. They have like so many players in that position that are league leaders in a lot of categories. So I was like, why are they getting another center? For me, I thought Bo Horvat would go somewhere like Carolina, maybe a team that desperately needed a 2C, but it depends on what they can make out of it. Because for me, the Rangers addressed their issue, right? They went in, they were like, we need a guy who's our right winger. They got Tarasenko, it's working out for him. So right now I would have to side with the Rangers a bit. But if Bo Horvat can change the dynamic of this team, maybe I'll be biting my words in a couple of weeks.
All right, we'll see. We'll give it some more time. And last one for me, and we'll swing it back into the fantasy conversation. So not only are the teams in the league making the little playoff push here, but if you're in a hockey fantasy league, you're kind of making your playoff push now. The playoffs kind of start, end of March, early April, like before the regular season's over. So are there any waiver wire sleepers right now that anybody looking to make a push for the playoffs in fantasy that fantasy players might want to keep their eye on?
For me right now, it's actually like, I wish someone asked me this question right before All-Star, before all of these trades went down, because if you picked up, speaking of the Rangers, if you picked up people like Philip Hedl, who I was like chirping on about this whole year, right before this Tarasenko trade went down and the Rangers had their odds and futures appeal boosted, you were probably feeling really, really smart right now, because he was not rostered in a lot of leagues, and I'm sure they're really happy. But other than him, if I'm looking around the entire league, there are some Islanders beneficiaries, but once again, I'm not exactly sure if they would be like the best pickups long term. If you want to take a short-term flyer on anyone who's maybe like, I know Palmieri was doing pretty well recently, so if you want to take a flyer on him, you should go for it. But around the league, sometimes I look at teams that are not even in the playoff conversation, but have players who are doing well. For me, someone sticking out is Kirill Marchenko of the Columbus Blue Jackets. The guy's just like scoring goals like nobody's business. That's pretty much all he's doing. So I think there's value there. He's barely rostered in any league. So guys like him, Logan Couture out of San Jose, he's not rostered in a lot of leagues. So when you look at teams that aren't making the playoffs, there's still players that are producing on them. Those are who I'd probably target right now, because you can get some sneaky value.
Well, Anna, fantastic stuff. Really appreciate you joining us here today on your Saturday afternoon. Means a lot. And keep up the great work over at the NHL, and I hope to have you on again down the road. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Absolutely. Anna, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. All right, folks, that was Anna Dua of the NHL, fantasy editor and host for the great National Hockey League. Good stuff, buddy.
Oh, yeah, she was great. Knew her stuff. It was perfect. Gave a lot of insight in fantasy, a lot of insight on...
Were you taking notes on that, pal?
Oh, of course.
You in a couple of leagues this year?
Not at all. I can never keep up with fantasy. But I do. I mean, she talked about the numbers. Those are critical for, writers, too. People don't think about that, too. And we're writing, especially... For me, I like to be analytical with the writing, and it also helps understand things, too. So definitely great insight there for sure.
For sure. So we're going to break in a minute, but before we do, I want to tell you guys a little bit about our friends at Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play, food and drink, beer and wine, fun and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game for you. From old favorites to the hottest new releases, we have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens and unplug your game for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, or Game Night Live communities are welcoming for all. We also do parties and corporate events. Located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village, go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd. Unplug your game. So, with that out of the way, we're going to take a quick break. I want to thank you all once again for spending your Saturday evening with us here at Hockey Night New York and tuning in at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast providers later on. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
New York Islanders fans, Sunday night is Hockey Night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York. The best night of the week for any Islanders fan. Hey there, welcome back. We missed you too. Now kick up your feet and settle back in to Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, folks. Welcome back to Hockey Night New York, here with Stefen Rosner of NYI Hockey Now, and myself, and Hockey Night New York, of course, and myself, Sean Cuthbert, only of Hockey Night New York. I don't have my own publication. But welcome back. We're going to dive a little bit into the week of Bo Horvat, week 1 anyway. So why don't we start with that, Stefen? Let's focus on Horvat, the player, who he is, and what he has brought to this team so far, and obviously a very limited amount of games. What do you like so far?
Well, I think he's as advertised, if not better. You know, him coming in, he had 32 goals when he got here, or 31, excuse me, right? 32, 31, whatever.
31.
Goal scorer, but he's not your stereotypical goal scorer. He's not, I wouldn't call him a sniper. What he's really good at is getting to open space, finishing off chances created, deflecting shots, and also, like we saw this week, get shots off quick from everywhere.
Yes.
You know, even if there's 2 guys on him, he's getting
quick
shots off
and accurately.
Quick. Exactly. And for that, I mean, he's the dream winger, or whatever you want to call it, centerman for a guy like Matt Barzal, and it's truly paid off.
Tell us why.
Just again, going back to thank you for that. Going back to just finding space. You saw when they moved, Wallstrom gets hurt, Zizekas plays with Barzal. It worked out early because Zizekas just found the space. He didn't finish the chances off, but he found the space. Now you have Horvat here. Not only does he win the faceoffs, not only does he's played better defensively than I thought. You know, he was. Again, he's a great two-way player.
I saw some Vancouver fans. They were like, yeah, he's a great player, but watch out from on the defensive side of things.
And that first game against the Flyers, I know they didn't connect on a goal with him and Barzal. They had chances, but getting down low, intercepting passes, getting passes up quickly to break out in the defensive zone, those were areas where I was, okay, that's more than I thought. I knew he was a solid defensive centerman, but at the same time, he was doing a lot, which helps Barzal. And then you just, again, goal scoring, the power play, he brings so much. Again, I don't think the Islanders obviously need more players brought in to be a true cup contender. But to have this guy around for another 8 years after this, he is the player that fits what the Islanders needed in one spot perfectly.
Right. Yeah, I think we're starting to learn that he's not going to be the Messiah here and cure all of the Islanders, ills and ails, whatever you want to call it. I think, as he keeps acclimating himself to Islander hockey, to playing with Matt Barzal, it's going to get better and better. We're going to see more and more. But he certainly fills a key hole that this team hasn't filled in ages. We joked about it, when we were doing the live stream before for the game. So I think that's great. But not only that, but what else comes with it, and we know this from him being a captain, but the character he seems to, give off as far as a player goes on and off the ice, and the quotes that he's already given. He sounds like a big time character guy. He said nothing but great things about coming here to the island. You love to hear the fact that before this trade even went down, that apparently the Islanders were going to be a top 5 destination for him if he made it to free agency, which you love to hear once again. And even though it's a small sample size, and I think we mentioned this a little bit during the live viewing party too, is that he's already kind of helped resurrect the power play a little bit. Now, look, a couple of games, you can't say it's resurrected, for good or whatever the case may be, but it's getting more talent on the power play on both lines, right? Whether it's PP1 with him there and whoever's going to be on PP2, right? And the fact that they've already scored a few goals here is a good sign. And if you can get more shots from the point with a guy like him in front of the net who's tipping, deflecting, or even just collecting rebounds and putting them where they're supposed to go behind the goalie, then you're probably going to see some better things out of the power play here, which they obviously need. So, I mean, pretty much an all-around positive pickup here, right?
He makes Barzal more, we're going to get to him in a second, but he makes Barzal much more dangerous.
He does. And why don't we just, to kind of talk about that a little bit. You already spoke about how Horvat's getting into the open spaces, the soft spaces, if you will, and just like subtle little plays here. And I think it was the other night. It was actually, he did it against the Canucks, and he also did it against Seattle, where just very subtle positional awareness.
Oh, yeah.
Where he sees Barzal get the puck, and he's already kind of scooting backwards to kind of just distance himself from a defenseman that's covering him in front of the net. And it's a very quiet play, but then you have a guy like Barzal who sees that out of the corner of his eye, and he's making that nice behind-the-back pass, or just a nice little tricky feed to get it to him, and then Horvat ends up finishing the play. So I think that is kind of complementary to what you're saying here as far as these guys meshing well together, and they can kind of, bounce off of each other's specialties and talents to really make some points happen, where you look at these guys where they might be able to actually lead this team offensively with numbers that kind of get closer to that point per game, area at the very least that you like to see out of your top players.
Yeah, and the Horvat's first goal in Islanders sweater that against the Kraken, where you're bringing it up, the definition of what he has to do. He's in the low slot. Barzal gets the puck. He backs up towards the back post. It's not even a great feed, which is even crazier. We go into that. It's not an amazing feed by Barzal to Horvat. That's a goal scorer's goal, where he catches it on edge right as it hits the ice and puts it top shelf. And that is what he has to do, find space. That one time the other day where he's in the bottom of the circle, 2 guys on him. Barzal, instead of peeling back like Barzal usually does, he drives to the corner, creates more space a little bit, sees a little bit of space for Horvat, gets the puck right there, and all Horvat has to do is let it rip, and he scores. Yeah, so they've played 55 minutes together.
Okay.
While on the ice. The Islanders have outshot opponents 31-16, 2 goals for, 1 against. And then we'll get to Baylor in a little bit, and he's had his struggles, but that line as a whole, 46-22 played, outshooting opponents 28-13, again, 2 goals. 1 assist. Obviously, this last game had an impact on that. On that number, they had not allowed a goal yet. So, again, they're out shooting the Corsi 4, which is just possession. They've possessed the puck more often than not against their opponents. And again, it's not crazy hockey that they have to play. It's very simple. Horvat makes Barzal's life simpler. Barzal makes Horvat's life a lot simpler. And in theory, both of those players should make Bailey's life a bit simpler, and that's kind of not been the case.
Yeah, and let's expand on that, because we know the season that Bailey has had. Fans have groaned about the fact that Bailey's kind of getting a shot here in the first line. Is he really deserving of it? And you make a case, yeah, maybe he's not because of the season that he's had. But you look at the rest of the lineup. We talked about this during the watch along as well, where you made the point where the rest of the lineup is kind of set where it is. It's kind of in a good place, right? Nobody wants to touch that second line right now with Lee, Nelson, and Palmieri. They've been making magic over there. And then the third and fourth line look good too. I mean, I think we all know that Parisi and Pajot have complemented each other very well. I think Holmstrom's done a decent job since he's been in there also. And the fourth line is the fourth line. You know who's going to be down there, whether it's Clutterbuck or Fasching or whatever it is. So I think all of those spots make sense, and they should stay where they are. So I don't have a problem trying to not only see if Bailey can slot in over there, but also just see if it jumpstarts him a little bit. And if he can complement them, and in this small sample size, it's worked. Is he your ideal? Is he your ideal first line left winger right now? No, of course not. But as long as it's not dragging them down, as long as the production is there and he's putting up a couple of points too, which he has so far, maybe a primary assist or two at least, which is great, then you let it ride and you see where it goes, because we don't think that they're going to get the caliber of player that's going to belong there between now and the trade deadline, right? Especially with the lack of assets that they have. So they got to make it work internally. And if it doesn't work, if they hit a wall, then you look at your other options, whether that's a Parise, whether that's a Holmstrom. I wouldn't mind seeing him up there, seeing what the kid can do up there.Maybe he can kind of be your grinder. I mean, Parise can do that too. I saw a suggestion in the chat while we were watching the game, put Cizikas back up there. I wouldn't be opposed to that because, a lot of these lines, you have your shooter, you have your playmaker, and then you have the guy who mucks in the corner. Yeah. So any one of those guys can work. It's just a matter of then finding the balance with the rest of the lines. But it's working so far. I say stick with it, even though they lost the last 2 games, but it doesn't hinge on that line and how they've performed.
Yeah, I mean, Bigley's got 10 giveaways in 3 games, but before the game against the Flyers, and we saw Bailey with Barzal and Horvat, Lambert was asked, do you think this could jumpstart Bailey? And he said that's the hope. Now, again, we don't think Bailey has that much value. He's got $5 million left 1 year after this year. They could try to move him to clear cap space, but like we saw with Bo the last week before he got traded, Anthony Beauvillier, he got a chance with Barzal. It didn't work out. I think that was kind of his last chance to show that, hey, he could be a part of this team. He moved him out. I'm not saying it's to the same level. There's tape. Every team has tape on Bailey for a very long time.
Right.
But if he could start clicking and really getting the points and playing well and raising his game, does a playoff team look at Bailey, or does any team look at Bailey as a veteran leader they could bring on? Doubtful, but at the same time, if he had really truly been collecting more points, maybe scoring a couple of goals this first week, now you look at it as, okay, maybe he's got more left than people thought. Again, it's short, small sample size, but you can't you can't move the lines around right now because, again, if you take away Palmieri or Lee from the second line, that second line's been so hot for you, you're interrupting that, which has been a line that's been carrying you, so you can't really do that.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, again, in these few amount of games, this handful of games that we had since Horvat's come over, like, the offense hasn't been the problem. It's not the scoring. It's the defense. It's literally keeping goals out of the net. They scored 5 goals
last game and lose.
Right, exactly. Today, so. Yeah, and they only get 2 today.
3. Right?
3. Was
they
it
lost 4-3, right?
Yeah, my mistake. Yeah. Okay, so they get 3 today, which is better.
And had a lead.
Right, they had a lead, and they had a lead in the other game too, Thursday night. But they're not able to keep the puck out when it matters most. And Varlamov played a good game today. I mean, we talked about how Sorokin had a little bit of a shaky one on Thursday. Not all his fault, but you thought he would have made at least a couple of those saves. But yeah, the team has to get it together defensively. And I think the lines that they have in place now are good. I think you still keep riding out with Bailey. And unless you got anything else in that, I guess we can move on from there.
Yeah, let's move on.
So we'll move on. So why don't we kind of talked about the results of the game. We don't have to really jump into that. We know they beat Philly. They had a good game against them, good game against Seattle, and we just kind of talked about Thursday and today, so we don't really have to dive into those. So why don't we get into what's on tap?
What's on tap?
What's on tap? Got to get some new intro music for that. All right, what's on tap, ladies and gentlemen? We hinted at it before. Tuesday night, Ottawa Senators, another winnable game, another team that are beneath the Islanders in the standings. But as we've seen recently, that doesn't necessarily mean anything because the Islanders are struggling against those teams too. Then you have what may be a very pivotal weekend for the New York Islanders starting on Friday, playing against the Pittsburgh Penguins. These are both home games. And then Saturday, very tough tilt. Shipping up to Boston for a 5 o'clock game. Once again, remember, viewing party at Lost Farmer Brewing Company, myself and Tony Stabile. Pregame show at 4 o'clock. But you got maybe a little bit of a struggle with Ottawa, but then you got 2 tough games, again, with heavy playoff implications for the New York Islanders. So what do you make of this week for the Islanders?
Well, the fact that you just lost the last 2, it kind of makes Ottawa Valentine's Day
right.
A
lover's quarrel.
Every game is a must-win here on out. Those 2 games should have been wins. But if you want to give yourself any chance going into that tough weekend, especially the rest of the week now that they have to face after that, you got to find a way to. It's not even just a win. Statement. Again, you got to statement win.
Show us something.
Like the Kraken game.
Seattle game was nice.
I mean, Seattle game was
more
nice
of that.
because they did exactly what they had to do. So I think, it's going to show what you're made of. And again, the Islanders haven't really played down to the great teams, the good teams. Obviously, Pittsburgh is hovering. They've had a lot of issues. They're, the fans there are unsettled with what's going on there. Jari's been hurt. DeSmith has been all right. They've having their struggles of their own. I mean, Boston is just an absolute unit on every level.
Yeah.
But Pittsburgh, this whole entire rest of the season is about the games that you have in hand or the opponents have in hand. And when you face those teams, beating them, because again, when you face the teams and you play the teams that have the games in hand, those are ones you have to win or find a way to get points in. Because again, an overtime game, if you get 1 point, they get 2. So it's at the end of the day, those are regulation wins you need.
Right.
And against Pittsburgh, where you played 2 in the span of 3 games, those are critical if the Islanders want to find some way to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you don't care if you give Ottawa a point. You don't care if you give Boston a point if you can get the win in Boston. But, taking 2 points from Pittsburgh is probably critical. And last week, we've been doing this, Bada and I, usually when we do What's on Tap is, what do they got to do this week for it to be a successful week? And him and I agreed that this past week, they needed to take 6 out of 8. They ended up taking 5. So they're 1 point short. So now you got to make that up somewhere, right? So again, tough week, but for the Islanders to stay relevant, stay in the mix here, to keep the hope alive at the very least for Islander fans, what do they got to do in these 3 games?
I would mimic the 6 of 8. I would go.
Well, there's only 6 on the table here.
A 4 of 6. I can't do math.
It's okay.
Well, you got to beat Ottawa.
Yeah.
And if you could find a way to get a point, I mean, look at
Squeeze some
Boston. You get a point out of Boston. That's 3 there. Honestly, you probably got to beat one of Pittsburgh. I guess Pittsburgh doesn't count the second game because the week after. Is that how you're looking at it?
Correct.
Okay, that was my mistake there.
It's okay, buddy.
So again, you get 2 points against Ottawa. Find a way to get a point against Boston. Then you kind of need. You got to get 2 actually. So maybe
4 to 5 points.
Yeah, 4 to 5.
Yeah, maybe that 5th point is the one you lost last week, right? So 4 would have been a little more acceptable if they had taken care of business completely last week. So now you're looking for 4 or 5 this week just to kind of get through and stay in the mix. We still got to see what Washington's going to do, what Pittsburgh's going to do, what Florida's going to do, what Buffalo's going to do. There's so many moving parts here.
These losses haven't helped when those teams. I think after Thursday's game, 5 games in hand. Pittsburgh had and Buffalo had. So again, these are not the time for these kinds of games.
Unless Pittsburgh just hits the tank somewhere and they go on some kind of bad losing streak. Well, what I'm saying is unless Pittsburgh loses some of those games in hand, Washington is the team that the Islanders are chasing here.
Again, because of the games in hand are so close. Yeah.
So we'll see. But folks, that was What's on Tap, and now we're gonna swing it in to Hero of the Week. So folks, when you hear this song, that means it's time for the Blue Line Deli and Bagels Half Price Hero, which this week is the B Comp Q, named after none other than friend of the show, Mr. Brian Compton. Been a while since we had that as the Hero of the Week, featuring boneless ribs, barbecue sauce, and pickles on a hero. Fantastic stuff, better than the McRib over at McDonald's. So stop on into the Blue Line Deli and Bagels Huntington location, mention Hockey Night New York, and get half off the B Comp Q. With that, Stefen Rosner, who's your Hero of the Week?
Sunday. No, I'm kidding. It's not a day of the week
Nice.
this time. But I think you got to go to Varlamov. Obviously,
Okay.
his last game before the break was fantastic. Doesn't count this week, but
Nope.
against the Flyers out of the break, first game back.
Yeah.
Early on in that game, probably the first 5 or 6 minutes, the Islanders weren't truly settled in, and he had to make a couple of big stops. They get that win there. Again, against Montreal, he was fine. He was better than fine. He made some big saves and big moments. Odd man rush
Definitely
saves.
not somebody to point at for the loss. No.
Got them the point. He played a critical point, and over his last 2 games, 9-12 save, 2.42 goals against. Not amazing numbers, but again, 14 of 7 high danger saves. That's pretty big there. Again, big saves against Montreal. We talked about it. Big saves against the Flyers. And yeah, you just look at, especially after the struggles of Sorokin. Lambert gives Varlamov this game, which he didn't have to. He could have gone back to Sorokin. But you know what? Let's get Varlamov back in there. And he played in goal exactly the way they needed him to play. Again, I don't think he didn't make a save they needed. He made those big saves. Again, the goals that were scored, backdoor wide open, slot wide open, deflection, breakaway rebound. I mean, you don't look at any of those
that was a
goals.
big save in itself, the first one.
Yeah.
The rebound goes in, which nothing he could do about that.
That's
but
a
the
huge
initial
save
save was
first.
fantastic. They just couldn't prevent the rebound from going in. So I like it, man. I think that's a good thing.
Thank you.
You got it, man. So on to mine, and this guy got it from Chris Botta last week, and I'm going to continue for Bo Horvat 2 weeks in a row. He's my Hero of the Week because, look, he's paid immediate dividends for this team, right? He comes over, he's already scoring goals, he's already helping the power play, his faceoff numbers are already really good. So as you said, as advertised, he's developed immediate chemistry with Matt Barzal. Again, small sample size, we hope that it continues. So far, so good. Hopefully it only gets better from here. And look, again, he obviously hasn't been the savior here. Not to say that these 2 losses have anything to do with him in a negative light, but is it enough? We're learning that it might not be. They can't beat Vancouver. They can't beat Montreal, 2 teams that they should have beat, even with Bo Horvat in the lineup. So there's obviously more things they need to work on. But look, I love the fact that they got this guy. I think he's going to be a great player for this team. I love that Matt Barzal finally has a running mate, if you will, riding shotgun with him for the foreseeable future, for the long-term future. And I like the contract, 8.5, not bad. That's fine. So there you have it, folks. Bo Horvat is my hero of the week. Nothing. You got nothing to say about that?
No, I didn't know if there was some music that was about to play. I'm still getting used to the whole dynamic of the. I was like, is there music going to play? No, I did have stuff to add. I didn't want to interrupt Ed's great work. No, what I wanted to say was when Lamoriello made the deal for Horvat, he made it so known early that this was not about this year. This is not about this year. Backed it up. Stop laughing. Backed it up. Actions speak louder than words. But then, as a realist, if you're a fan or an analyst or a writer, stop thinking about this year as a whole.
Right.
Again, this is chemistry that they're going to have for 8 years. You talk to Barzal now, and we have. He just a different mentality for him. He is more juiced up, more energetic, willing to talk. He was more excited for Horvat when Horvat scored his first goal as an Islander than.
Yeah, you even saw his face.
And I asked about it. I said,
yeah.
he goes, I'm ecstatic. And again, he hasn't had a player like this to the point where if this is a lost season. To me, it's not, because if you're not going to make the playoffs, this is such vital. Again, when you call up a young guy with dead time to play games and they're getting experience, the next 20-plus games is just experience for Barzal and Horvat to build as much chemistry as possible to go into next season with no issues at all. Again, if they had gotten him and the Islanders are in a playoff race and, he was a rental and that's it, he's gone, then that matters. Then it's, okay, immediate clicks. The fact they're clicking so well now, can you imagine a full season with these guys together? You're looking at Barzal getting back to being a point-per-game player. Horvat's not going to score 50. Could he score 35, 40? Again, if they're that hot and they're clicking and they have another weapon on that line, this is such valuable time, whether they're in the playoffs or not, and I can't speak enough on that.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Stefen. And look, you look at it another way. This is a key part of the lineup that's had to be filled for the longest damn time, and it's finally something they don't have to worry about, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully they're able to keep their youngish core intact when you talk about Barzal, Horvat, Pelech, Pulock, Dobson, Sorokin. Those are pretty much your main guys. You can make an argument about who surrounds them, as well. But look, if they can keep kind of complimenting those guys over the course of these long contracts that these guys have, then you're still going to have a chance. You're still going to have a fight and maybe get back into the playoffs. So Bo Horvat, Hero of the Week, along with Semyon Varlamov. Good stuff. This is now the part of the show where we ask Jay and Ed how they're doing. How you doing, boys?
I mean, we're a little, well, I don't know about we. Jay's
right.
Jay's probably not upset at the Islanders' loss. He doesn't care.
He doesn't care. How you doing, buddy? You were upset, during the watch along.
I really wanted to stick it to the Rangers Ed podcast, who predicted the 3-2 OT victory, and I was like, well, it's now 3-2 Islanders, so there goes your prediction. But it ended.
They were just off.
It still ended in overtime with the Isles loss. So.
Well, look, man, I'm glad you were able to stick with us here. After that crushing defeat today, and how's it going in the chat, man?
Yeah, we going straight into Questions Brewing?
It's Questions Brewing time,
it's
bro.
Questions Brewing time.
It's time for Questions Brewing, brought to you by Lost Farmer Brewing Company.
Alrighty.
That's right, folks. It's time for Questions Brewing. Ed, what do you got for us in the chat?
Yeah, well, I know we're trying to avoid, pretty much every week, topics of, Lou Amarillo and
listen,
and
I mean,
unavoidable right now.
It's unavoidable right now.
I get it.
We're having a bad
Bring
day.
them on.
All right. So some of them are formatted differently.
They got creative.
You can get creative with these.
Okay.
Mike is asking. He says, in his younger days, Lou was known for coaching changes.
Yes.
Do you think Lou would consider considering? It's not like I'm going to take action.
Is he going to do it? Right.
Maybe he wants to.
Maybe.
Would consider a coaching change with Lane during the season.
I think Lou wants to do more than make a coaching change.
Really?
I want to bash his head against the wall with the way he's saying. But no. We talked about this during the live show.
We did.
What's the point? Well, let's say you fire Lane. You're not, whoever you bring in, it doesn't matter. If you're firing Lane, that means they're not making the playoffs. Or you're at the point where it's after the deadline, the playoffs are not happening. You fire Lane, you're going to promote probably Johnny Mack, who's been the power play coach.
What's the point?
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Again, now you could go get if you're bringing in a coach that you think, okay, you're going to sign him for X amount of years and he's going to be your coach next year and you want to send. Same thing with Horvat working with Barzal in a lost season. Get a coach in here, no pressure at all, season's done. me, but I look at coaches that are available. Quenneville's not going to get a job. Babcock is not the guy.
Right.
Who are you bringing in that's going to immediately change this team? I don't think anyone. I think you let Lane ride this out. You see if Lou stays through the offseason, because again, whoever comes in probably fires Lane. Unless it's Trotz.
I was going to say, you saw it. I think we saw it in the chat during the watch along. I think it was Trotty819 who was like, all right, fire Lane and bring Trotz back. For the just story and the entertainment value, sure.
Fantastic.
And I don't know, this might even be more entertaining, but if he pulled what he did years and years ago, where I think it was he fired Robbie Fatorik. It was one of his coaches. It was either Fatorik or Julian, whoever it was. But he fired one of his coaches for the stretch run, and he replaced them with himself.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And he hopped behind the bench.
I was saying that, yeah.
I'm not saying it's the right move, but if Lou wants to fire Lane and get back behind the bench just for the sheer, watch along, if you will, sure, why not?
Listen, if you want to find out who on your team gives a you-know-what and who doesn't, Lou behind the bench, people either are going to rise to the occasion there, or Lou is going to be able to see exactly, okay, you are no longer part, but he's not going to do that.
He's not going to do it. I think his coaching days are over. Yeah, if they ever really, started in the NHL. Yeah, I don't think he ever coaches in the NHL, only as a replacement. Yes. I don't think he was never hired as a coach outside of just being a replacement.
Fired
coach.
He fired, was it Pete DeBoer? I think he either fired Pete DeBoer or Hines on Christmas morning.
I think that was DeBoer.
Yeah.
I think that was
DeBoer, by the way, loves him.
There you go.
That just shows you the effect of Lou Lamoriello.
Maybe DeBoer just doesn't really care about Christmas. Who knows?
Maybe he's
Travis.
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, look, I don't think there's going to be a coaching change before the season is over. Now, if Lou wants to reassess and look at this year, and if they fall on their faces, and he says, okay, maybe Lane wasn't the right guy, sure, maybe he makes a change there. I don't know. As much as I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Trotz behind that bench, because I never truly got over being fired to begin with, sure, it's not going to happen, though. I think they're just going to ride this out for better or worse with Lane Lambert. What do you got, Ed?
Well, we'll segue right into, if Lane Lambert isn't brought back next year, who would be the top three choices?
Top three, as if we pre-made this list going into the show.
We talked about
Well,
this.
we know Trotz is number one.
Yes, Trotz would be number one, even though it's not going to happen. But I don't know, man. I don't know. Is there some new blood out there that's coming up? But I don't even think you want a veteran team getting a new coach. You probably want to go with
established NHL experience, playoff experience guy. Like a Boudreau.
Well, I was just about to say, a guy like Boudreau who just lost his job in Vancouver. I mean,
I'm only saying that because that's the only coach I know in my head that's available right now.
Well, but suiting the Islanders' purposes, the guy hasn't really rode the train to complete success with the teams that he's had, but he does ride them pretty far into the playoffs when he does have the right players on the ice.
Yeah.
So could Bruce Boudreau be a candidate in that very hypothetical situation? I think so. He's a well-respected coach. What happened to him up in Vancouver was a mess. And, he's coached some high-end teams over the past years that he's had some mild success with. So I think he's a name you throw in there.
Also, you got to see who does get fired. At some point.
Maybe there's a guy currently coaching somewhere, that maybe ends up getting cut loose, and you look at that and you say, hey, maybe this is a guy. Who knows? Maybe if Washington doesn't make the playoffs, Laviolette falls out of favor there, and he's a guy I'd bring back behind the Islander bench. Absolutely. So who knows?
Yeah. All right, NZAB09, what other changes can Lou make to shake this team up? Don't want to be stuck like the Preds, Preds of the East, stuck in mediocrity.
Well, I think moving Bo was a big part, getting that cap space. I know you obviously used it to re-sign Horvat, but making moves like that, moving players that you don't think that are part of your future. Now, again, we talked about Josh Bailey. Can he move at the deadline? If there's someone that would give up a pick, again, you're just probably to get rid of his contract, you're going to have to attach a pick. Now, if there's teams that are interested, there's teams like the Coyotes who just love to take on bad cap. They might want to do it, but again, a move like buying him out in the offseason, that's a move that's showing, okay, we're trying to make as much space as possible. We're trying to get people out of the lineup that maybe we don't see fit. But again, they have a lot of young guys that have been given a chance this year, like a Holmstrom-esque guy. That, again, you have to go. I think it's just getting a higher level player to play with Barzal. You need to go get a veteran defenseman. But other than that, it's just you're already involved with this core to the point where there's not much major changes you can make without blowing it up, and they're not going to because they just signed Horvat.
And we do know now that Lou Lamoriello is willing to shake this team up if he needs to by getting rid of Beauvillier. It might have been too late for some people, but listen, I think that in some ways, maybe I'm being dramatic here, but a bit of a masterstroke by Lou to get Bo involved in that deal. Now, say what you want about Ratu and the pick. Maybe you're still upset about that, but the fact that he was able to unload a guy who wasn't figuring it out here and get rid of his $4.15 million contract, I thought was great, because I don't know about you or the rest of the Islander fans out there, but I was ready to give Bo away for a pick. For a low-end pick, a third, fourth-round pick. Like, his value was in the tank because he wasn't producing. So, like, the fact that he was, and no disrespect to the man or the player that Anthony Beauvillier is, but the fact that he was kind of able to just kind of be tucked into that deal and make that space and make that room to bring a Horvat in, I think was great.
And the Canucks retained 25% of Horvat's salary, making it a wash. I think it was, again, we'll find out in the long term how much of a good trade that was, but I thought it was brilliant. But, again, that was a move that should have brought up more of a spark than it did. Again, Horvat added some spark. They were sparked out of the gate. But you're breaking up pieces of this core group that's gone on runs. And that was the first step of doing that, which I think is critical into you don't have to change the narrative of this team, but they were very comfortable as a group. You kind of, if they can move Beauvillier, they can move X. And if they keep moving those pieces and bringing back better players or making more space to bring in better players, that's what Luke could do.
Yeah, and outside of Josh Bailey perhaps being the most obvious guy as somebody who you unload to maybe shake the team up, as you say, or unload some salary, he's suspect number one there. I don't know who it is after that, really.
Mayfield, probably.
Yeah, maybe. As far as a guy who they can unload just because of his contract status. But I also mean just like, who else are you considering a guy that you're willing to give up or, do away with, so to speak, just to kind of change the face of the team, where you're also going to have to fill up their spot too. I'm not sure what you do, with that. But, anyway, I do think that if this team does stay reasonably in the playoff chase, now, whether you have your own personal opinion that says there's no way they're making it because they're still losing these games to bad teams or whatever, but if they're still in it, if they're still mathematically able to fight for a playoff spot, I do think Lou's going to try to add something else. Again, it might be something on the lower end of the lineup, like we talked about, a depth defenseman or a forward who can plug in, but I do think that as long as it remains reasonable, this team is going to try to make the playoffs because they don't want another failure at UBS Arena.
Ego.
This is year 2. Well, ego, yes, but also brand new building.
Oh, for sure.
They want some playoff revenue here. You know what I'm saying? They're losing season ticket holders because of the losing last year, and probably this year too. I mean, the Islanders are bending over backwards now, offering all these weird promotions and stuff, trying to get people to, enter them into contests to win, Bruce Springsteen tickets, I think it is, or whatever the case may be. Like, what does that tell you? That means they're losing their clients here, right? So they need a win. Bo Horvat was a win for the lineup and for long term, but they literally need to get back into the playoffs and finally have playoff hockey in UBS. So as long as they kind of stick with it, if they rattle off a win against Pittsburgh and Ottawa, the closer it gets to March and they're in it, I think Lou's going to add something else.
It's so funny how things work. They come into the break, get 2 wins. The ego, or the confidence couldn't have been higher. Like, and then you have these 2 losses. Oh, it couldn't have been lower. But now if the Islanders go and they beat Ottawa, they beat Boston. Let's say they win all 3. Now you're back to being
beat Pittsburgh and even take Boston to OT
by everyone. Like, that's
right.
And if they lose all of them, it's sell everybody. I mean, I even saw someone say you should sell Barzal right now. I was like,
it's been a roller coaster for the team on the ice. It's been a roller coaster for the fans watching this season. It's just been something to watch, just with how up and down and how.
And last year they never went up, so it was like.
At least they've been teasing some hope.
Yeah, they were on the little baby roller coaster. This one's like Kilimanjaro.
They peaked early. What was that? Maybe November.
Yep.
They really peaked
over
in November.
3.5 goals per game.
Yeah, and then it just started going like
under
this.
Under 3 goals
slowly.
a game.
Yeah. So Ed, you got anything else for us?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we got the Rangers Ed podcast in here.
Okay. What do those clowns have to say?
Well, it's not a question. I just need to address. They say the Eds are unpredicted at game predictions, which I'd like to say. You lost today, while you got the correction of overtime loss right. The score was wrong. If FanDuel's not giving that to you, and DraftKings isn't giving that to you, we can't give that to you.
Love that, Ed. That's right. Give it.
I mean, you lost that bet.
Hockey
you made
Night
that
New
bet.
York,
You
Ed.
lost.
Love that you're giving it to
You
Rangers
lost the
Ed.
bet.
And you know what? Want to personally send a thanks out to Rangers Ed for being Ranger fans and maybe anti-Islanders for spending your entire day here with us.
Yeah,
at Hockey Night in New York for the watch along.
I didn't even think about that.
For the post game show. So it is flattering. We appreciate it. We love it. But no, it's a lot of fun. We're glad you've been hanging out with us and giving us some digs.
Somewhat glad.
Yeah, somewhat fun. Yeah,
he just made me want to run through a brick wall. How hot he just got on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Not bad. Love
I'm
it.
ready to
Ed,
go.
bring the fire.
All right. Well, we have a more legitimate question here.
Okay.
So Enzeb again. How do we bring back the defensive prowess they had under Trotz? Lockdown defense, cover the right man, better in their own zone. If they can fix the defense, the team will find the offense with Horvat, Nelson, and Barzal.
Well, we talked about that before.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know. We don't know the answer.
How do you get it?
We don't know why it's not happening.
Yeah, it's so confusing. And again, it's not the new guys. We talked about it. It's Pulak making a mistake.
Romanov isn't the reason why the rest of the team can't play defense.
And Dobson's, I mean, I think it's actually not funny, but when we spoke to Lou this summer when they signed Dobson to his extension and Romanov, someone asked Lamoureux, what more do you have to see? Or why maybe only a 3-year deal? And he said, I had to see more from Dobson defensively. And everyone, brushed that off. But you're looking at this year, and he's got to be better defensively right now. Not saying he's as struggles as much as a Sebastian Aho and just only has offense in his game, but this is a guy that you're in. He's been around. He's had great partners. We talked about it. Boychuk, Green, Char to learn from. These guys are defensive defensemen, most of them. To learn from it, and we just haven't seen him take that. He's taken that next step offensively, which is again the Islanders need that. You saw teams like the Lightning where their whole back end scores goals. You just haven't seen enough. A little too soft in front of his own goal, and that's been a consistent issue this year for the Islanders. I think it just comes back to basics. And again, we talked about how the forwards have to help out more too with getting back. But yeah, I think you're going to have to. Again, that's a great point that they have Horvat now. But to get back to that dynamic of a defense where you're shutting down every game, you're going to have to sacrifice your offense. You're going to have your forwards getting back a lot more. And again, I don't think that's doable for a full regular season.
Well, and the problem is they don't have a full regular season to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, can they adjust now and try? Sure. And maybe you get desperate and give it a whirl. And maybe because even Barry Trotz was interviewed recently, and he talked about the different dynamic between coaching the Islanders and coaching a team like the Capitals, where they still played a defensive style of hockey, but he had Alexander Ovechkin
that's a game
and
changer.
Nicholas Backstrom. Now, is Bo Horvat enough for this Lane Lambert team to say, okay, we can go back a little more defensively because we have a weapon now who can help us on the offensive side of things? It's a little bit risky, but maybe that's something he looks at, and that's probably the only way it really happens. But again, I don't even know if that's going to change whether or not these guys in front of the net are going to, all of a sudden remember how to, mark their assignments just because they're playing a more defensive system overall. Because it's not just marking players in front. That's a whole change in how they're handling the neutral zone, entries, exits, and all that. So I don't know what the right answer is. The unfortunate part is just that for whatever reason they don't have this thing figured out, and they're basically being dismantled defensively every now and then. It's leading to losses like this.
And it's not skill either. We know that, again, you don't just lose, for Beauvillier, you don't lose the ability to score. It's a mental thing a lot of times. We saw with Bo, he missed the net a lot on big chances or hit the goalie in the chest. It's like Pelican, Pulak, and Mayfield and Romanov, wherever much they're struggling, these guys have done it before. They know what they have to do. They know what the plays that they're making. It's just not happening, and that's... thankfully for us, that's Lane's job to figure out.
Yeah,
he's the one that looks at the video and is in the room and understands what they're going through. And you want them to ask questions. Hopefully, Romanov is asking a lot of questions, and Bolduc and Aho. But at some point, it stems from just if Pelican Pulak play lockdown, it usually trickles down. It's a trickle down effect. Right. And again, you're just not seeing everybody working together enough on the ice.
Indeed, Ed. How many more you got, buddy?
The chat has spoken. So unless you guys have something from your platforms.
Yeah, Stefen, I think Stefen might have had one or two from Twitter, and then we can wrap it up.
We got actually a good amount. Let me find it quickly. But 26 comments on questions. We're not going to get to all of them. Let me see.
Okay, I'm sure they were all calm, cool, controlled reactions and logical.
I'd like to point out Rangers Ed did predict the Brock Nelson goal for the first goal. All right, so I'm giving him that.
Obviously, he's a big Brock Nelson fan. So, again, we appreciate you hanging out with us here.
He said he only claimed the outcome, not the score, which is a lie. We saw 3-2.
I think he did. We'll have to roll back the tape, but I think he did.
Yeah.
But either way, thanks for shoving that in our face when it's nice and fresh, and we're still stewing over it. But we're doing our best to put on our best face here on the show. So, Stefen, do you have a question lined up for us here? Okay.
So, this is Mike MC Grip 16.
Okay.
Regardless of their position, they have to move Varley and Mayfield at the deadline to recoup high draft picks. Thoughts? Well, I guess he did not read my article because that would answer
he agrees with
he agrees with my article, which thank you, Mike. But wrote the other day, I said, regardless of what happens, playoff spot at the deadline, out of the playoffs, teetering, whatever, you got to sell your assets because the Islanders have given up pick after pick, year after year. They lost the first for Romanov last year. I guess this past year's draft, they traded the first conditional for Horvat. You have two guys that will bring you back picks. Everyone's arguing with me or whatever it is, and again, I don't pretend to know more than anyone else, but the way Varlamov's playing with teams like the LA Kings, Seattle Kraken, who desperately need goaltenders, they're in playoff spots. They need goaltending. For a year of Varlamov, you're getting a second. You could very well possibly get a first. Same thing for Mayfield. As much as he struggled, he's a player who blocks shots, plays in the penalty kill, has scored big goals, has playoff experience. You could probably get a first or a second for him, and what you do with those guys is, again, if the Islanders are in it or out, doesn't matter. You could find a way to fill a spot with Mayfield. You could trade a pick and then use that pick and go get a veteran defenseman or whatever you have to do. There's ways to go about replacing those guys if you're in a playoff spot. But if you're not, and these guys want to come back, sure. If you're going to lock them up and you think they're not going to walk and you have the confidence they're not going to walk, sign them now or have something right away with the end of the season, and that's fine. But if there's a question mark at either of those guys not either agreeing to want to come back or the terms or whatever the case may be, you move them because, again, they're going to walk for nothing. And the Islanders are not in a situation with how old of a team they are. I know they have a lot of young talent. Just let guys walk for, even if you're getting a third or second round pick, it's better than nothing, especially when you have no idea what you could flip those picks for. Like I just said, if you want to go get a veteran defenseman and you get a second or a third for Mayfield, whatever that case may be, and you want to flip a third for a depth defenseman that could fill in that Mayfield hole at a much cheaper price, to me, you have to do it. So I think definitely, I don't think Lou is going to move either of those guys. But if I was Lou and I was looking at just logical, not from, again, no personal in the room how they affect it, on a financial hockey cap situation, you would move those guys.
Stefen, the logic and the reason is sound.
Yep.
Everything you just said makes a hell of a lot of sense. And I know you know this already, but so long as the Islanders at least have a chance at making the playoffs, neither one of those guys are getting dealt.
I agree.
The only way, and I said this to you during the watch, the only way these guys get dealt is A, if they're out of it, but I still don't think they're going to get dealt because I think Lou certainly wants to bring Varlamov back, and he's going to be back.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Mayfield's brought back too, and if they're both going to be brought back, they're not going to be dealt.
That's what I said. If they already agreed, like if Lou would never say it, the players wouldn't say it until after the year, but if one of those signs back after a year, they'd say, oh yeah, we had this done early. Because again, too, Lou doesn't ever give out numbers or anything because he doesn't want other teams knowing his cap situation.
Even though they just go to cap friendly.
No, but I'm saying though, if they have a deal in place with Mayfield already, no one knows how much they're going to have to play with. Yep. So I think it's possible they have deals done with both those guys already, and they're not allowed to talk about it. I guarantee the Horvat deal wasn't done that morning that he got here. I would think before he even got traded, there was off the record conversations. Because again, Lou wouldn't make that deal if he didn't think Horvat was re-signing, so
yeah, I think at least there was confidence whether there was any backdoor stuff or just he read the room. He knew that he can get the deal done. But if that's it for Questions Brewing, then that's it.
That is it
for the show. So cue up that exit music.
You want to
try that again?
Stable shaker.
You want to try that again?
Yes, Ed. Cue up the exit music, please.
Hey.
Thank you. We'll edit that in post. All right, folks. I want to thank you all for tuning in to twitch.tv/Hockey Night NY and your favorite podcast providers later on. A huge thanks to NHL fantasy editor and host Anna Dua for joining us. Great spot from her. And a big thanks to our sponsors, starting with presenting sponsor Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Flagship location at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Check them out at BlueLineDeli.com. Also, a big thanks to Lost Farmer Brewing Company, 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. Check them out at LostFarmerBrewing.com. And once again, 3 viewing parties coming up at Lost Farmer this month. Come down, hang out with us. The Boston game on Saturday, and then the 2 Winnipeg Jet games. Wednesday when they're home at UBS Arena, and then of course Sunday, Stefen will be with me that day. 3:30 start that day. We'll have a pregame show for you. So lots of fun going on at Lost Farmer. There's going to be drink specials, food specials, raffles, giveaways, prizes. Lots of fun. Make sure you come hang out with us. And, of course, a big thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Check them out at mainstboardgamecafe.com. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to Stefen Rosner. Stefen, where can we find you on Twitter and your great coverage of the New York Islanders?
Appreciate it. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Stefen_Rosner. That's STEFEN_ROSNER. And NYIHockeyNow.com.
That's right. Stephen's been doing a great job over there every day. Multiple pieces, multiple articles. Great coverage on Twitter, too. So definitely make sure you check Stefen out. That's why we brought him on the show, because he does such a fantastic job. And
Christian was leaving.
Because Christian had to go. We had to bring somebody else in. You're the guy, buddy.
You found me on the street.
You can follow myself at Shawnee Hockey. You can follow the show at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Remember, if you love what we're doing here at Hockey Night New York, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, spread the word. And to Rangers Ed Podcast, once again, spending 12 hours with us today at Hockey Night in New York. Hope you got something fun going on Saturday. But, folks, always appreciate you tuning in today, this afternoon for the game, today, this afternoon for the post-game show. We've been Hockey Night in New York. For Stefen, I'm Sean Cuthbert. Have a great rest of your weekend.